All right, guys. If I've been successful, then right now I'm broadcasting live on YouTube. This is kind of crazy. I'm not sure I set it up correctly, and I desperately hope that the people out there in the interwebs are able to find this live stream. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Aaron Boster, and this YouTube channel I started, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. My goal here was to create an opportunity to share online content for my patients to help them learn between clinic visits. I wanted to be able to create a place where I could say, go here on the internet, and this is content which is good and valid. And I see that Tanya Marie has joined. Hey, Tanya Marie, Merry Christmas. And now I see M has joined in. Hey, Mahi, thanks for joining us. We try to type something in the chat. Welcome, everyone. Merry Xmas. Hey, Darla, welcome. Rebecca, it's great to have you here. Hey, Diane, it's great to see you. This is really exciting. Howdy, Tim. How are you doing? Hey, Divine, it's great to see you, Sin. I hope that you're doing well. Hey, Kathy, thanks for joining in. Shelby, it's great to have you here. Bruce, what's up? Lo, how are you doing? It's great to see you. I hope it's warm in Florida. So, my goal here with this YouTube channel, as I was sharing, is to create content which is valid, content that I believe in, where you can go and get solid MS information and education. It's become really fun for me. I've really enjoyed sharing content with you guys. And I have to tell you that just reading the comments warms my heart. To read that somebody in Great Britain or somebody in Czechoslovakia or somebody here in Ohio is able to watch a video and learn something makes me feel awesome. Darla writes, Merry Christmas to all who celebrate. Absolutely. There's Russell Hall. What's up, Russ? Merry Christmas to you guys. Now, I've never really done a live chat like this before, and I hope it's coming through okay. If you do me a favor, when you log on, tell me where you're from. The people in the chat, give a shout out and tell me where you're from, city and state or country. I would love to see where everyone's logging in from. Hey, how's it going, LC? This is really cool. Now, it's my intention to answer questions live. So this is kind of like an ask me anything. What's up, Matthew? It's great to see you. What's up, Matt? And so if somebody wants to write in, Darla's coming from Ohio. Hey, Darla, OHIO. So is Candy. Christy's joining us from Pittsburgh. And I've got AJ's HR down in Texas. What's up? Sleepy Hollow Huskies, shout out to Ohio. Rebecca's in London, UK, one of the most amazing cities on the planet. I've got people from New Zealand. What's up, LC? Tim's calling from Ohio. This is really cool. I've got folks in Mississippi, down in the Bahamas. So simply exquisite. I am super jealous. It's cold outside here in Ohio, so thanks for tuning in. Got folks calling in from Huntington Beach, California, and from Illinois. LW, it's Laura up in Michigan. What's up, Michigan? Go Blue. I shouldn't say that down here. Someone's going to sock me. All right, and we've really got some folks coming in. This is super exciting for me. I'm going to ask you guys, as you log on, share with me where you're from, and leave a comment. And also, let's start to do some question and answer. Now, the guardrails for the question and answer, I can't diagnose you or provide specific personalized recommendations for your situation. I can't do that on the interwebs. In order to do that, I would need to see you in clinic. I'd have to actually fully examine you. I'd have to look at your MRIs, etc. So I'm going to ask you guys to share questions, but they need to be general questions. They can't be specific. Also, please, let's keep this G-rated or at least PG-13. And so I don't want to have a lot of profanity and stuff because, families will be watching this. So Russell Hall writes to me, lots of new products on the way in the next year to 3 years. What are you excited about? And so, Russ, big shout out. Here's to you. Merry Christmas. This is my Christmas grog. If you guys want to take a guess at what I'm drinking, feel free to write it down in the comments. So Russ asks, what am I excited about? And there's a couple of things that I'm really excited about from a therapeutic standpoint. I'm excited about the advent of more highly effective therapies entering the market. There's a pill called cladribine, which is both new and really, really old. We thought way back in 2009 that it would become the very first pill to join the MS armamentarium. I'm talking, Alex, what's up? I'm talking about cladribine. Now, cladribine was rejected by the American FDA back in 2010, which really stunk. And so I sort of just kind of got rid of all the information about cladribine in the Clarity trial. And what we're seeing now is there's a resurgence. And actually, there's been a new accumulation of data. This drug, cladribine, which is a pill, and it's a form of microinduction, has now been approved in Canada. I believe it's been approved in different parts of Europe, certainly in Great Britain. And I think that it's going to join the MS armamentarium. Now, cladribine is not the end-all be-all. It's a pill, but it's a form of microinduction. And many of you that tune into my channel know that I'm very interested in induction therapy. And so I will share, Russ, that I am excited about that. Now, looking at a couple other questions, I'm afraid I've missed some of these. Let's see what the next question is. Rebecca writes in from London, England. My big question, MS making me hot and cold. And hey, I was born in the UK. So I'll share a couple thoughts about energy and about temperature regulation, Rebecca. And specific to this season, just like in the UK here in Ohio, it's cold outside and it can get really cold. And so a couple things happen. We keep our homes super warm. And when we go outside, we bundle up and we get all bundled up. And we're constantly going from a warm environment to where it's cold, bundled up to a warm environment. And I find oftentimes that people with MS can actually get overheated in the winter months because they're not hanging out outside just in their short sleeves. And oftentimes what we actually need to do is wear layers and quickly take them off when we come inside to regulate our temperature. Now, trying to look at some of the other questions, AJHR writes, Merry Christmas, Dr. B, so cool. I think it's cool too, and I'm glad you're here. I have a lot of pressure in my head, spasticity, and I do notice about the weather is bad, I get more symptoms. Is this common? Super awesome question. Now, one of the truisms, one of the truths with MS is that certain symptoms worsen in the winter. And if we know that they worsen in the winter, it allows us to be proactive. So what am I talking about? Well, number one, spasticity. I have a lot of videos on this channel about spasticity. And if you haven't seen those, maybe you can check those out. But spasticity is where your muscles get tight and they don't coordinate very well. And so when you're trying to bend your leg, it doesn't want to, or it'll spasm or cramp. And two things make spasticity worse. Being still, like sitting at your computer for a couple hours, or like sleeping. And number two is being cold, the ambient temperature. So waking up in Ohio is awful for spasticity. And many of my patients that either don't experience spasticity in the summertime or they experience it very mildly are really rough right now. They're having a lot of trouble bending their legs and spasms and cramps, and it's totally not cool. And so how do you combat that? Well, one, knowing it is very, very helpful. Warming up your muscles by walking, by exercising, by massage, these can be very, very helpful. And stretching can be super helpful. Sometimes people try to overheat their home, and this doesn't work. You can't get it warm enough. Now, there's a couple other symptoms that worsen in the winter. Depression is worse in the winter. One of the reasons that we are here right now as a community is because depression is worse in the winter. And things like Christmas are super stressful for folks. They're really stressful. And so I wanted to create an opportunity for us to all get together and hang out and sort of enjoy each other's company. But depression is a major issue with MS, and it can get worse in the winter. And so knowing that's very, very helpful, and combating that is very helpful. And so this channel and this video right now is actually intended to do that to some degree. To finish out my thought, fall risks are worse in the winter. It's slippery outside. We don't have our footing. You can't see the ground because it's covered in snow or ice. It gets dark out really, really early. People are more spastic and their balance is worse. And so we see a lot of falls. And so knowing that helps you go into the winter with much more success. And AJHRs, that was an awesome question. So Merry Christmas to you. Hey, Janine. Janine writes in, what's the normal time frame for an attack? I've been having one for about 6 months. Wow, that's a really long time. So when I talk about an MS attack, I'm talking about a new deficit, a new focal neurological deficit. And I'll use loss of vision in your eye as an example, a classic optic neuritis. Now, this is an event or a deficit that you haven't had in the past, and now you have it. Or it's been gone for a very long time, at least a month, and now it comes back. Now, attacks are caused by inflammation in the brain or spinal cord or optic nerves. And inflammation comes on, the medical term is subacutely, meaning it doesn't happen suddenly like a thunderclap, but it happens over hours to days. And so you'll see that there'll be a crescendo of symptoms leading into attack that kind of ramp up over several hours to days. And then typically inflammation doesn't go away in a day. That's why I teach people about the 24-hour rule. So if you have inflammation, it'll still be there 24 hours later. I give an example. Let's pretend you socked me in my jaw and my face got all puffy. Tomorrow it's more puffy. That inflammation in my face doesn't go away in 24 hours, and neither will classic MS attack symptoms. Now, how long does it last? Generally speaking, attacks last weeks to months. Months is a long time, but it can happen. And anymore, when we talk about clinical trials, we assess follow-up at a 6-month as opposed to a 3-month clip, because it can take people a really long time to recover. Now, Janine, you wrote in that you've been having new symptoms that are worsening for 6 months, and that's a really long time, but it is conceivable that that can be the duration of an attack. We have to keep in mind that other things can drive MS symptomatology, like occult urinary tract infection can kick up symptoms, and it can last for a long time. Or a separate problem can cause neurological symptoms, like a slip disc and sciatica that we can confuse for MS. And that's why it's so important to be checked out and evaluated and examined. That was a great question, Janine. Merry Christmas to you, and thank you. So I'm going to butcher this name. Ravinsara. So Ravintsara. I apologize if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. Merry Christmas to you. And Ravinsara writes in, does physical therapy help MS? Oh my God, yes. Yes, 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 yes. Physical therapy is the jam when it comes to MS. And it's very rare that someone with MS doesn't benefit from a course of neurophysical therapy. Now, physical therapy, it can be magical, because one of the major problems with MS is risk of deconditioning, becoming deconditioned, which is not your fault. It's super hard to stay in shape when you have MS. And so you can develop weak legs and a weak core and poor flexibility and poor cardiovascular endurance. And that can actually make you neurologically worse. Like you can not walk as well. But it's not from progression of MS, it's from deconditioning. And just going to World's Gym and paying Biff the trainer to work you out doesn't work very well in MS, because Biff the trainer is not familiar with heat sensitivity and motor fatigue and functional reserve, etc. Neurophysical therapists are. And so one of the most excellent ways of getting in shape and staying in shape with MS is to work with an expert neurophysical therapist. And so that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. And if you haven't participated in physical therapy, add that to your things to do in 2019, because it's awesome. So I'm not good at names, guys. I'm sorry. So STJERMOGA. Hi. He writes in, how can I train my dizziness when I move too much? And so dizziness is one of those awful invisible symptoms where people looking at you can't see how bad things are inside. Now, when I talk about dizzy, I immediately try to divide it into 3 categories. When someone says dizzy, sometimes they mean pre-syncopal, like they're going to pass out, like syncope, like they stand up and they feel lightheaded and their vision gets dark and they feel cold and clammy. And that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about pre-syncope. Dizziness sometimes means vertigo. Vertigo is a hallucination of movement, like you're spinning on a merry-go-round. And there can be attacks of the brainstem in MS that can cause vertigo. Also, dizzy sometimes means to people poor balance or incoordination. I'm not talking about you being a clumsy person. I'm talking about something different than your baseline. And these are really challenging symptoms to treat. Now, I'm going to answer the question from a vantage point of vertigo, because most people, when they say dizzy, that's what they mean. Although both vertigo and incoordination respond to the following. Are you ready for the answer? Da-da-da-da-da! Physical therapy, for real. There is vestibular physical therapy that can retrain your inner ear so that you have better balance, and it can make a world of difference. Whereas I haven't found medicines to work terribly well for treating dizzy, physical therapy is the bomb, specifically vestibular physical therapy. That was a great question, and thank you. So Mama Jojo, what's up, Mama Jojo? It's great to see you. She writes in, hi, doc, what promoted you to choose MS neurology? And so I'll take a moment and answer that question. Some of you have heard the story before. I decided to be an MS doc when I was 12 years old. And that's true. And I didn't decide to be an MS doc when I was 12 because my uncle had MS. He had MS for my entire childhood. It was a specific day. I was over at my grandmother's house, and my uncle was in a wheelchair in the other room, which is where he spent most of his time. And I walked in the kitchen, and there's my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother's now passed, as has my uncle. But I was struck. I walked in, and they were both crying. They're kind of holding hands, and they were sitting at a table. It was a high top table. And when I listened about why they were upset because my uncle was having a problem, and they couldn't reach their doctor. They were scared and alone, and they didn't know what to do. And I told my mother at age 12 that I would learn to do it better, that I would learn to take care of people better than the man that was taking care of my uncle. Now, I like to joke, I didn't know what I was telling my mom. I didn't know I'd be in school for 27 grades, or I'd be near bald by the time I finished my training. But I knew that no one should make my mom and my grandmother cry. And I knew that no one should make my family or any family feel that alone and scared. Now, this is an era that predates the interwebs with like things like this, where you can just jump online and learn a bunch of stuff. The National MS Society wasn't in full bore, and there really wasn't a great resource for my family. And so it's been my goal to correct that wrong. Now, my uncle's passed. We buried him a few years back. And his parents, who are his caregivers, my grandfather, Papa, and my Nini, they're both gone. I miss them. And I can't help them. That's too late. But I can help you. And I can help other families. And I was the child of someone in a family with MS long before I was an MS doctor. And that makes me think about this disease a little different. It makes me approach patients and families probably a little bit differently. But to answer your question, it was a long time ago because I'm not 12 anymore. So jumping back in the questions, I am loving these questions, guys. If this is a format that you like, please drop a comment and tell me whether you'd like to see more stuff like this, because I'm enjoying doing this. And so if it's working for you, then we can do this, once a month or something. So Matt writes in, what's up, Matt? It's great to see you. Matt has an awesome YouTube channel called Fat to Matt. And if you haven't checked that out, you should totally check out Fat to Matt. Matt writes in today, recent popularity and focus on mitochondria. Do you think there's potentially something there? So for those of you that aren't familiar with the term mitochondria are the energy of the cell. It's like a battery for the cell. It's literally what creates the energy to drive the machinery of cells. Mitochondria are really, really important. Now, when I first heard about people talking about MS and mitochondria, I thought they were crazy. I remember when the first poster at an international congress talked about mitochondria, and I pointed at it and I laughed and I said, that's stupid. And I was wrong because that's not stupid, and I was stupid. Shame on me. It turns out that there is a role of mitochondria and energy in MS. And there's a therapy out there right now. It's a medium level therapy. It's a pill taken twice a day called Tecfidera, and that's the code name for dimethyl fumarate. And the way that dimethyl fumarate works is by tricking the cell into thinking it's under oxidative stress, and the cell creates this cytokine profile, which is anti-inflammatory, and that really leverages the mitochondria. So I think there is something to mitochondria, Matt, and I do think that we don't have the answers to MS. Energy expenditure is a major issue in MS. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see more research focused on mitochondria, both for energy, but also for the disease process itself. So more to come in 2019. Great question, my man. So next I see a question from Heather Miller. Best hints to deal with extreme stress. Whew. So let's take a moment and drink some holiday grog while we think about extreme stress. Nobody goes home at night and says, honey, I want to get stressed out. Nobody says that. And yet Stress is something that's unavoidable. I hate when doctors tell patients to just remove their stress. I, it's like removing glasses, or how do you remove stress? I don't know how to do that. But I have seen time and time again that in the setting of worsening psychosocial stressors, people experience more symptoms. I'm not telling you that stress causes MS or causes symptoms, but I think it can exacerbate the intensity of the symptom. It can make it much worse. And so trying to learn to manage stress is very, very important in MS. And it's something that I can't convey, with just two sentences and say, excuse me, do this or do that. It doesn't work that easily. But learning how to manage stress is really important. I have several videos on this channel that talk about fatigue and they talk about depression. And honestly, the tips that we use to combat fatigue and depression oftentimes help lower our stress levels. And so I'll throw that out as something for you to check out if you haven't already. I think that we have to admit that we're stressed out, and I think that we have to try to make it acceptable, culturally acceptable for us to address our stress. For example, I recently put out a video called Holiday Hacks, and I've loved your responses to it. Thank you very much, this wonderful community. And in it, I shared a bunch of different holiday hacks, things to help get you through the holidays. One of my key hacks is to be selfish and say no. No. You need to be able to set boundaries, and you need to be able to take time for yourself. And all too often in our culture, it's go, 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 and deal with the kids and deal with the school and do the laundry and get the stuff done and go do the job and help the neighbor. And there's no time for yourself. And so in dealing with stress, I recommend that you be selfish, quite literally. And you have to practice saying, I can't do that right now. I'm sorry, I would like to help you, but I really need to take some time. And then go watch a movie and literally decompress. And you'll be amazed at how much that helps you. So that was a great question, Heather. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you. Jumping back into the questions, this is challenging. I'm that I'll do it wrong. So let's see here. The next question. So Lo writes in, Doctor, anyone else in the family have MS? My uncle had MS, and I have a distant cousin who has multiple sclerosis. Those are the only family members that have MS in my family. Hammock, HAMCKI, what's up? Writes in, is Jelenia with JC virus positive a huge risk? So that's a very nice question. Jelenia, the real name is fingolimod, is a pill taken once a day. And it's a highly effective medicine. In my experience, it's not as effective as the monoclonal antibodies, but it's arguably one of the most effective pills to treat MS. It's a very solid medicine. It works very, very well in young, active people. It's a good drug to consider. And Hamrick writes in, if you're antibody positive, is that a big risk? So there's been a lot of people taking Jelenia. I'm talking about 190,000 or some really large number. And there's been maybe about 11 cases of PML. Now, I don't believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't believe that because 11 people got PML out of 190,000 that we should never use Jelenia. And the one key important thing is you can't follow the absolute lymphocyte count or look at the white blood cell count numbers to figure out how to mitigate the risk for PML. If you insist on having no PML risk at all, you'll find that you have very, very few drugs to pick from. And I think it's important, Hamrick, that we can contain the risk benefit of the drug within the context of the risk of the disease. Because if your doc's reaching for Jelenia, it might be because you don't have very nice disease. And that's 100% likely. And so we have to balance that against a very, very small theoretical risk. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, that's just my 2 cents. I am much more scared of undertreated MS than I am about a very small risk of an opportunistic infection. Thank you for that question. That was a really good one. So let's take a couple other questions. I've got a lot of people saying some nice things like thank you and I appreciate your dedication. And you know what? You're welcome. I appreciate you. I'll share a quick story with you. Years back, I went through a difficult personal time. It was a situation where I had a young child and an ex-wife that left me. and it was devastating. It was one of the hardest things that I've done in my adult life, surviving that. And for months, I experienced a depression like I've never experienced before. And I hope that none of you ever experienced this degree of depression. It was horrible. I would literally go to work and come home and just stare at the wall. I wouldn't turn the lights on. I would just stare. And I would fall asleep in my clothes. I'd wake up. I'd change my clothes, maybe shower, go back to work. But during that difficult time in my life, clinic saved me. Being with my patients, being with those families, and administering care and loving them and them loving me, that helped me survive. That got me through that very, very hard time. And I learned something. I learned that hiding what I am, hiding the fact that I am a neurologist, that I'm an MS neurologist, and not embracing that's dumb. And so you're welcome, but I also want to say thank you, because just like you might feel like you benefit from this online community, I benefit from this online community. And being able to share with you means the world to me. Being able to share with you my version of MSology and how I want to beat the crap out of this disease, that means a lot to me. So thank you. Let's take a look at some other questions. Someone writes in, I would love to see a format like this monthly or quarterly. Honestly, this is fun, and I'm enjoying answering your questions. So if you guys feel similarly, let me know, and we can do this. Lo writes in, any work on cure? Cure is a very, very charged word, and I want to be blunt in my answer, Lo. In my lifetime, and I'm a very young man, I'm in my mid-40s. In my lifetime, I don't think we'll have a cure for MS. I would love to tell you that we're about to have a cure, but I'm not going to lie to you. And I think that selling false hope is arguably one of the most evil things that we could do. And so I'm not going to lie to you and say, yeah, we almost have a cure. The reality is that we do a better job of taking care of this disease in 2018, almost 2019, than we've ever done in the last 100 years, 200, 300 years. I mean, we've really come a long way. Our ability to early diagnose and our ability to implement highly effective therapies and change the disease course has never been better. And whereas I don't think that our understanding of the basic neuroimmunology is adequate to beat the disease and to come up with a cure, unless we come across it by chance, I do think that in my lifetime, we will make MS boring. Boring. Boring is the highest compliment. Now, I'll use an example of type 1 diabetes. Back in the ancient days of yesteryear, type 1 diabetes will kill you. You'd have kidney failure and die. And nowadays, you can have type 1 diabetes and live a normal life expectancy and a normal life quality. And I'll give you an example of my buddy Yaz. So Yaz Kisanuki is one of the smartest neurogeneticists that I've ever worked with. He was my senior resident at U of M where I trained. And when I came to OSU, he came to OSU. We were both professors there. And this guy was on fire. He's a brilliant man. He's still at Ohio State today, and he does great work. I love Yaz. Merry Christmas, Yaz. And one day, after years and years of knowing this guy, after going through residency with him, after working side by side with him in the clinic, I had lunch. We weren't having lunch together. We just sat next to each other at our desks while we were eating. And Yaz is from Japan originally. He had an adorable Japanese little box of food. He opened it up and was setting up the little trays. And I looked over and he pulled out a pen, and then he put the pen against his skin and he injected himself. And I said, dude, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm taking my insulin. I said, you're a type 1 diabetic? He said, yeah, I've been type 1 since my childhood. I didn't know that Yaz had type 1 diabetes. And if we play our cards right, Lo, I want MS to be like that for you. I want MS to be boring. When we do it right in 2018, we can actually make that happen for lengths of time. And I think that is a realistic goal in my lifetime, is to make MS so boring. I can't pay a higher compliment. I want you to have excitement in the bedroom. I want you to have excitement in the boardroom and the playing field. I want the clinic to be boring. When we're talking about our kids and vacations, and I'm showing you pictures of my dog, that's because we're not talking about the fact you can't move your legs. That's because we're not talking about loss of work or difficulty with thinking and memory. That was a great question, so thank you for asking it. Going through a couple other questions. Let's see what we've got here. Eric writes in, "You're epic, doc, and you're not bald." Thanks, my man. Now, I don't know if I can adjust the camera here, but I don't have a lot of hair. And I'll be honest with you, I joke about it. I really don't care. I would just shave my head. I'll probably do that someday, but for the time being, I'll leave a little bit on top. And he says, "You've been a godsend for my family. We love you. Merry Christmas." Well, Eric, right back at you. Allow me to wish you and yours health and happiness this year for the whole year. I've learned more information in the last few minutes than I've gotten from my neurologist. Well, this is a different format. When we're doing this, I don't have to bother with exam or filling out forms. I just get to talk to you, and that's a joy. Marie writes in, and I thank you for that, Marie. And it's probably not that your neurologist doesn't want to share with you, but this is a format that I adore. LW writes, "Do you have virtual appointments with people out of state?" So presently, for our established patients where I work at Ohio Health, we have launched something called e-visits. Now, e-visits is not a virtual camera like this. An e-visit is an online visit, and it's only for our own patients that are stable, so that we can have a touch base without them having to drive in. It is my goal to be able to do virtual visits. We see plenty of people outside of Ohio. So I live in the great state of Ohio, and I see people from West Virginia and from Texas and New York and Vermont, and I see people from Dubai, and we see people from all over. But I very much would like to come up with a way of doing it virtually. So I don't have that available yet. We see people in consultation, and we're kind of old-fashioned. We do face-to-face medicine, but I do think that's part of the future. And I think that over the next several years, a virtual visit will become a staple when managing people in MS. I really believe that. So Trankintend writes in, whoops, I just lost it. Sorry, guys. I am learning how to do this. Lainey writes in, "Would you start an Instagram for your followers?" What's up, Lainey? I actually had an Instagram. Let me tell you a little bit about social media. So I didn't have any social media, like personally, prior to launching Twitter. I don't like sometimes interacting on Facebook, for example. It makes me feel sad. And way back in the day, I had a Facebook and I got rid of it. And I didn't have any social media for a really, really long time. But it dawned on me, Lainey, that everybody in my clinic has social media of some form. Most everyone has a Facebook, whether they want to admit it or not. And some people have Twitter, and some people have Instagram, and some people have Snapchat. And the point is that a lot of folks in clinic, almost everyone, whether you're 80 years old or whether you're 20, uses some form of social media. And so I wanted to be able to reach people beyond the walls of the clinic. We see our patients about every 3 months or so. And so that's 4 times a year, which is twice as often as the average MS doc might see their patients. But that's 4 times a year out of 365 days, which means these people are without the clinic and our resources 361 days a year, which is horrible. And so it was my thought, if we could reach out via social media, then we could touch base with people. And that's why in like 2016, I started my Twitter account. So at Ohio Health MS is our Twitter account. And I use that to push out new research that comes out every day from PubMed. And that's where I share some of our theories on MS and how we manage MS. And I really like Twitter. And I also have a Facebook, again, for the same reason, so that I can help reach out to people and help educate them and give them easily digestible MS education, which is valid and not crazy. And so I started an Instagram. I actually really like Instagram, Lainey. Instagram is a cool platform. Now, my wife is a massive Instagrammer. She's got a really gorgeous Instagram, and I set up an Instagram, and it was nowhere near as pretty as hers. But I used it for a while, and I don't use it anymore. I stopped about a year ago. Here's why. I have a job. I'm an MS neurologist. I'm also a systems medical chief, so I have administrative roles for like 12 hospitals and ensuring that MS care is delivered okay. And I'm a father. I have 2 kids that are amazing. I've got a wonderful family, and I was spending too much time on social media. The Facebook and the Twitter and the Instagram and then YouTube, it was too much, and I had to let something go. Now, Facebook and Twitter are used more often by my patients than Instagram. And Facebook and Twitter can interact with YouTube, whereas my Instagram account couldn't. And so I had to let that go by the wayside. So maybe in the future one day I'll pick back up Instagram. But for now, Lainey, I hope you understand. It's not because I don't love you or because I don't want to share on Instagram, but I had to let something go so I could invest more time at home with my family and at work. So A Scrubs writes, ooh, I just finished round 1 of Lemtrada. I'm 24. How long do you think it'll take for my CD4 count to hit 200? So first off, let's give a hoorah for having finished some Lemtrada. That's awesome. And for those of you that are not familiar, Lemtrada kills adult B and T cells. Wow. And then it forces the young guns, the pluripotent stem cells, to grow back nicer. And one of the metrics that we follow is a subset of the white blood cells called the CD4 count. So you have all these different white blood cells, and then some of them are lymphocytes, and some of those lymphocytes are CD4 cells. And that's one of the immune cells that we follow. And so after we give someone Lemtrada, we will track their CD4 count. And he's asking, or she's asking, when that goes above 200, how long does that take? It can take a really long time. It takes about 12 months to go above 200. And so I follow that in most of my patients. We have like 200, just under like 230, 240 patients on Lemtrada, and it can take over a year for that to come back. Now, in my clinic, until your CD4 count goes above 200, we keep you on a cyclovir, and that's to help prevent shingles outbreaks. And I ask my patients to adhere to a pregnancy diet until their CD4 count goes above 200. And that might be overkill, but I love my patients and I don't want them to have a foodborne infection. And so I asked them to do that. That was a great question. And again, congratulations on knocking out some Lemtrada. That's awesome. So the next question I have comes from Tanya Marie. And Tanya Marie writes, does Ocrevus really reverse disability? So the answer is yes, infrequently. When I say reverse disability, I want to clarify what I mean. Ocrevus is not magical. It's not magical pixie dust that reverses time and makes you young and attractive and sexy again. Otherwise, maybe I would take it. Ocrevus is a highly effective MS medicine, ocrelizumab. And Ocrevus and Lemtrada, and to a lesser extent, Tysabri, even some cladribine, we can see confirmed disability improvement. And if you're not familiar with the term confirmed disability improvement, I have several videos on this channel that talk about CDI, or improvement. And with Ocrevus, we increase the likelihood of achieving a period of at least 3 months of improvement as compared to taking standard of care Rebif by 33%. And so you're 33% more likely to have experienced a improvement in neurological status taking Ocrevus as compared to Rebif. And so the answer is yes, but it's not a very common thing. We don't see it all the time. So a couple people have taken a guess at what's in my Christmas grog. Candy wrote in, and she said coffee. And Candy, that's a really good guess, because any of you that have come to my clinic know that I drink a lot of coffee. Like I'll drink a cup of coffee with almost every patient. And when you consider that I'm seeing like 16 some MS patients a day, that's a lot of coffee. This is not coffee. When I got up at 6 this morning, I was definitely drinking some coffee, but that's not what's in here. And someone else writes in and says mulled wine. Now, I would love to drink some mulled wine. I had mulled wine once at a Christmas party, and it was delicious. This is not mulled wine, but the cup, which was a gift from a friend of mine, would certainly be perfect for mulled wine. So you keep guessing. Darla writes eggnog. And again, this would be a good thing to carry eggnog, but no, that's not eggnog. So going back to the questions, Sarah writes, can MS increase your anxiety? Yes. People with MS are at increased risk of mood disorders, specifically depression and anxiety. So yes, those things can worsen in MS, but we can treat anxiety. You can treat anxiety and manage it. And if you have anxiety, that's what I want you to do. Now, Alex K joins in. What's up, my man? Merry Christmas right back at you. And thank you for tuning in today. So going down the list, JJ Cooper writes in, pets are good for stress. And is Spike your favorite talking dog? So for those of you that don't follow JJ, JJ has a really fun Twitter account. and he's got this gorgeous boxer named Spiky, and Spiky is a talking dog. And so check him out on Twitter. And I really do love Spiky the talking dog. So absolutely. Now, you know that the love of my life is River. That's my American Mastiff. And I just want to say that out loud because she may be like in the room somewhere, and I don't want her to think that I have feelings for Spike that I don't have for her, because I love River. But Spike's a really freaking cool dog. So thank you for joining us, and Merry Christmas to you and to Spiky. So anonymous girl writes in, they're making too much money to find a cure, and you're wrong. This is not a money-making scheme to keep people sick. That's a silly conspiracy theory, and it's false. And if we could cure MS, we would do so in a heartbeat. So that's a clever thing that people say, but it's not true. And so I want to be very clear that nuh-uh. Looking down a couple of the other questions, and someone writes in, hey doc, does MS attack one's memory? So MS does not cause an Alzheimer's dementia where you don't know who you are or who someone else is around you. It doesn't do that. But MS can impact thinking and memory, specifically executive functioning, quick short-term memory, bringing things up on the fly. It can affect prefrontal functioning. And I have some videos on memory on this channel and thinking and cognition. And so you might want to check some of those out, but it can do that. So LC writes in, I don't think we have access to Lemtrada or Ocrevus here right now. And so LC, you want to use the most effective drug that you have where you live that's currently available. Do I think that you need to move to another country? No. But I do want to make sure that for whatever it is that you have available to treat your MS, the most effective drug you're comfortable with, that's the one you're on. And so Lainey writes, I watch your lectures on YouTube as well. That's super awesome. I'm really glad you do that, Lainey. Thank you. So Darla says, wassail. Could this be wassail? And I could go wassailing. Now, wassailing is a cool idea where you go singing from house to house. And I don't know how to sing, and it's not wassail. And Cynthia writes in, could it be whiskey? And I do enjoy a good whiskey or a good bourbon, but no. And Diane writes in, and Diane says, could this be beer? And Diane, you're right. My Christmas grog is Pilsner or Kel. I love a good Pilsner, and I love Czech beer. And so, zum wohl and Prost, and Merry, Merry Christmas to you. And Diane got the answer correctly. Thank you, Diane. Good job on guessing. So let's look at a couple other questions here. I've got about 15 minutes left. This has been really great on my end. I hope that this has been really great for you guys. And please leave your comments down in the section below because I would love to read through them. The ones I missed we'll get to later. Why do MS drugs cost so much? Eric writes a very, very good question. Why do they cost so much? And there are reasons. And it's not greed, like Scrooge McDuck. MS drugs cost so much because they can take 20 years to develop. Quite literally, when a drug hits the market, it's typically been tested for over 2 decades. And there are entire companies that have dedicated all of their capital for an entire decade just to developing a drug that may or may not hit. There are PhDs that have dedicated their entire life's work to figuring something out that may never come to fruition. And when a drug hits and it's FDA approved, there's a need to recoup the resources. So there's a need to recoup all of the R&D. Now, this can, particularly in the United States, makes things super, super expensive. And I want to share with you recently a discussion that I had related to this topic. It's my belief that every person with MS should be on a medicine. And it's also my belief that we will get every single person on a medicine no matter what. Now, very rarely, I don't get to use my first or second choice because of various reasons. But I submit to you that I've never failed in getting someone on a drug. And getting on a drug means it has to be affordable because we can't break the bank trying to pay for the MS medicines. Now, there's a medicine that I like a lot. It's a pill. It's a lower efficacy drug, but I love it in the second half of the disease. It's called Aubagio, and it's a labeled branded drug, and it's expensive. And there is a way of taking an off-label drug which turns into Aubagio chemically. It's not Aubagio, it's a different drug for a different disease, but when you swallow it and it hits your stomach, it turns into Aubagio, and it costs like $8 a month. And so I had this existential crisis where I thought, should I take everyone off branded Aubagio and put them all on this cheap version? And so I reached out to a friend of mine, an MS expert that I have a lot of respect for, a guy named Gavin Giovannoni. I love Gavin. He's at Bart's MS. And so here's to Bart's and here's to Gavin. Great contributors to the MS world, scientifically, and also to the MS community. And Gavin does a lot of things off label. And so I asked him, I said, what do you think about this? And he wrote back a blog post that really touched me. He said, listen, if the person has payer insurance and it's not going to cost the individual excessive amounts of money, then doing it that way allows the drug company to amass money to find the next cure for Alzheimer's or the next cure for ALS. And so you're really engaging in sort of an exchange program. If the patient doesn't have adequate resources and they would have to pay for that cost, then it's not okay. And I've really taken Gavin's thoughts to heart. And so when I'm prescribing Aubagio, if the insurance will cover it, that's what I do. And if the insurance won't cover it, then I use this cheap version. And so hopefully that answers the question of why drugs are so expensive. So jumping back into questions, AJHR writes, phenomenal experience on this live. Woo, I'm digging it too. Any comments on remyelination? I lost writes, any comments on remyelination? So in order to beat MS, we really need three kinds of therapy. We need anti-inflammatory therapy, which we currently have. In the United States, there are 17 FDA-approved therapies that are all different forms of anti-inflammatory therapy. So Jelenia, Tecfidera, Aubagio, all of the interferons, Copaxone, all of the monoclonal antibodies, Tysabri, alemtuzumab, which is Lemtrada, Ocrevus, these are all anti-inflammatory drugs. But that's one of three things that we need. This little piggy is we need a remyelinating agent. We need an agent that puts myelin back on the nerve. And there's a couple that are being tested. Opisinomab or anti-lingo is one that's being tested, and we're participating in the clinical trials at our center at Ohio Health. And I'm very, very hopeful that this will be the first one to successfully remyelinate. Thirdly, we need a neuroprotective agent, something to prevent the leaking of the water out of the pool, something to prevent loss of the functional reserve. And so into today, 2019, we have one of three therapies. We have anti-inflammatory, but we need remyelination and we need neuroprotection. There's a lot of ongoing work looking into that. And so it's not as if there aren't efforts, there are. And that example of anti-lingo is an exciting one. So let's hope that in 2019 that hits. So BK Holly J writes, have you ever seen someone who walks with a cane improve enough where they don't need it? The answer is yes. I have seen people with MS drop the assist device, drop the cane. If you haven't checked it out already, excuse me, I have two videos on this channel that are called the Improvement Project, and then I have an Improvement Project update. And in these videos called the Improvement Project, I share with you real world situations where I have seen human beings with MS improve. And I share a story about a young man that was actually using a walker and went to using nothing. And that's not airy-fairy BS. That's real because it's my patient. And I take care of the guy, and he's amazing. He's got an amazing family. And so, yes, I have seen that. It's not very often, but it does happen. And so let's keep looking and see what people have shared. Let's look for a couple other questions. So Cynthia writes in, does LASIK help with the water retention due to infusions? That gets a little too specific into infusion medicine. I'm going to pass on answering that. LW writes, third attempt at a question. Okay, this is her third attempt at a question, or it's his third attempt. So let's definitely answer it. I'm sorry I missed it. I'm trying to do this all by myself. So he writes in, third attempt at a question. Can you speak to worsening physical MS symptoms attack with no new lesion? Yes. So is it possible to get worse in MS and not have a new spot on MRI? Yes, that happens a lot. And there's a lot of different reasons. Reason number one is that the MRI doesn't catch everything, particularly community practice MRIs that literally have a gap where they're missing pieces of brain. And they take a very thick slab on the MRI. So they may average like 5 millimeters. And so you're going to miss lesions. You may only get a brain MRI and have a thoracic cord lesion and miss it. Also, just because there isn't a spot doesn't mean there isn't a problem. And long before we had MRIs, we were able to diagnose and manage MS. You can have MS pathology without a new spot. It is true. You can have reactivation of old lesions that wake back up and create a problem. You can have loss of functional reserve and the loss of function that goes along with it. So yeah, it's not all about spots. Very commonly, I see doctors do something that doesn't make any sense to me. They get an MRI when someone has an attack. I don't need an MRI when someone has an attack. I have the human in front of me. I can listen to what they have to say. I can examine them. I don't need an MRI. I need an MRI when that person's doing great, when they feel fine, when there's nothing wrong, because I need to look under the hood to make sure that I don't see any new spots. Seeing new spots when someone's feeling good tells us that they're not going to do well long term, and that if they're on a therapy, they're having breakthrough disease. So LW, I'm sorry you had to ask 3 times, but I hope that addresses your question. Thank you for tuning in, and Merry Christmas to you and yours. And he writes, no problem, cool. JJ Cooper writes, your video on the leaky pool is one of the best. Thank you, JJ. I want to point out that the leaky pool model of MS that I'm making reference to, I did not invent. My close friend Stephen Krieger did. He's at Mount Sinai in New York. Stephen is an amazing, brilliant man and has really contributed significantly to MS. And his model is one of the very best ever. And so thank you, Stephen. So Abby Page writes in, muscle spasms in my neck. Wow, spasms stink and they can hurt really, really bad. I have several videos about spasticity on this channel. So Abby, if you haven't checked those out, I have an entire playlist on spasticity. Check out the playlist and then message me on YouTube if you have any questions. So we're starting to wrap up. We have a couple more minutes left. And because I've been drinking my Christmas grog, I'm going to end so I can use the bathroom before I wet myself, which at my age is like totally not okay. But before I go, let's address a few other questions. And so Ichabod. What's up, Ichabod? It's nice to see you online. Ichabod is a great person and has done great things to bring some of my content to Reddit. So thank you very much for that. And Merry Christmas. Ichabod writes, I had a new attack and a new vision symptom. And my MRI came back showing no new lesions. And my neuro said, no worries, the MRI was clean. Yeah. Okay. When I'm assessing someone, there are 3 things I need to think about. How are they doing clinically? Are they clinically having any new disease activity? And in this case, sounds like you were. How are they doing on exam? Meaning stuff that they didn't tell me about that I find on exam, like their hands clumsy. And what do I see on the MRI? Now, to feel most excellent, all 3 have to be okay. If one of the 3 is not okay, we are not okay. So it's good to have a clean MRI, but it's not good to have new neurological symptoms. So respectfully, I disagree with the neurologist that says it doesn't matter that you're having new symptoms because the MRI is clean. Nuh-uh. You need both to be okay. And in this case, it sounds like it's not. That was a great question. So Carid, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, writes in vitamin D amount recommendations for those that are significantly deficient. So vitamin D is interesting. It's a vitamin, but it functions like a neurotransmitter and it functions like a hormone in the human body, which is really cool. And it turns out that lower levels of vitamin D can run MS faster. So literally people with MS that have low levels of vitamin D can get worse quicker. And so you don't want that. Now, the good news is you can supplement vitamin D. So you can take a pill of vitamin D and make it go up. And specifically, we're talking about checking a total hydroxyvitamin D, and we're supplementing with D3 because it's the best absorbed. Now, how much do you take? It depends on your level. So you can check a blood level, and if the blood level is above 30 but less than 50, I typically give people about 5,000 international units of D3 a day. Now, I'm not giving you a recommendation. I'm just sharing what I do in clinic. If it's less than 30 and I really want to get it up, excuse me, oftentimes I will use prescription vitamin D3, 50,000 units weekly. And then after 3 months, I check it again. That was a great question. Thank you. So Simply Exquisite writes in, B12 for low energy. Yeah, if you have B12 deficiency, supplementing B12 is a good idea. If you don't have B12 deficiency, then I wouldn't supplement my B12. Please give your family thanks for letting us do this. John Williams writes, John, my family is amazing. It was actually my wife that suggested, hey, you were talking about wanting to connect with people and you wanted to create a space where people could feel good on a difficult day, Christmas Day. So it's really my wife's idea to throw up today's event. So I'm grateful to her and I'm grateful to my family for allowing me this hour to do this. And so we're about to wrap up. I'm going to take one more question, and then I want to kind of wrap things up. Cami writes, your channel is the best group therapy support group I found. That's awesome, Cami. Thank you very, very much. And Pinewood Drive writes, will you be available to rewatch the live stream? Yes. And so as I understand YouTube, what we're recording right now, or what we're doing right now is being recorded. And I should be able to post this as a video. And so if you guys want to go back through and look at this, you certainly can. With that, I want to wrap up. My name is Aaron Boster, and thank you for learning about MS with me. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for participating in the comments. It's my intention in 2019 to do a lot more of this, to provide a lot more YouTube content with videos about how to smack MS in the face and how to live your best life, how to be the best version of you despite having MS. And so if that's something that gets you fired up like it gets me fired up, then let's get together on YouTube again. And thank you for your ongoing support. Now, this has been fun for me. I'm so appreciative. Matt, take care. Linda, thank you. Kathy, thank you. Darla, I love you. Joss V, hang in there, my brother. And I'm so glad that you joined me today. Heather, what's up? LC, howdy, howdy. Alicia says thank you. And I say thank you back. I'm going to wrap up. And until my next video, take care. Have a wonderful holiday season and practice gratitude. Look someone in the eyes and say that you appreciate them. That's magical. It's magical for you and it's magical for them. And with that, I'm going to tune out. Until my next video, take care. Have a happy holidays, and I wish health and happiness to you and yours.